So there's a bunch of data inside your Google Analytics account, assuming it's set up properly. And if it's not, go talk to Julian over at measureschool.com or Mercer at measurementmarketing.io. They've got some wonderful training around GA. I'm not going to try and do that here, but assuming that your analytics account is set up properly, there's a ton of data there that you can use to enhance and improve your remarketing strategy. So I'm just going to quickly run through a few of the reports that I will look at, and then in the worked example videos, I'll show you some real numbers from an anonymous client and how I would think about their numbers, what I would look at, and how those numbers would affect the overall strategy. So I'll always start off by just looking at the audience overview report in GA and just understanding what I'm dealing with. So things like how many monthly users, how many monthly sessions, how many typical pages per session, or the average session length. What's the bounce rate for this site? If I see a bounce rate of 93%, when I look at that, I then start thinking, well, hang on a minute. What existing traffic do you have? Where's it coming from? Is this a one-page site if I've got a 93% bounce rate? So I'm just getting a bit of context and understanding of what we're dealing with. The shopping behavior report, which is under the e-commerce section, if that's set up correctly, and I'll show you an example of that in a future video, that can be very, very useful to not only visualize the flow of people through the site, how many people look at categories, to products, to cart, to checkout, but also it's very, very quick and easy to create new segments, which is one step away from creating a new remarketing audience. You can do it just by clicking on the right place in that particular report. So it makes building your remarketing lists very, very quick and easy. I'll look at engagement. It's not a great report. If you really want to get good information, then you've got to build a custom report. That's beyond the scope of this training, but it'll give you the main time buckets, i.e. people between 3 and 6 minutes or 6 and 10 minutes, and show you some just high level metrics for those different time buckets. We'll look at an example in a minute. Session quality and conversion probability are two metrics that are created by Google's machine learning. So session quality is a number between 1 and 100, and everybody that's come to your site gets assigned, or every session, I should say, gets assigned a score based on a whole bunch of factors. So it's a little bit like we're doing here. We're looking at all of these different things to try and decide who might be a good group to remarket to. Well, Google's saying, well, leave it to us. We're going to look at all of those factors, plus a ton of other factors, plus what we learned from all these other websites, and we're going to give these people a score. And then what you can do is you can retarget to people based on their score. Again, one click to build that segment, which helps you build an audience very easily. And then you can say, okay, I want to remarket just to people whose session quality was between 51 and 100. The people with the best quality sessions, they are probably the people most likely to buy if I were to show them a remarketing ad. Certainly much more likely to buy than someone who had a session quality of between 1 and 5, right down the other end of the scale. That'll make a bit more sense when we look at some real data in a moment. Conversion probability, which they actually created first before session quality, is very, very similar, but it's more of a future prediction. So rather than a prediction and a lead score, if you like, for something that's just happened, that session, conversion probability is how likely does the machine think they are to buy in the next 30 days. Again, similar sort of buckets, 51 to 100 being the best. So again, it's a score of 1 to 100, it's probability. Sometimes these reports are way out, and in the example I'm going to show you, that is one of those cases. So you don't always use this, but I always glance at that report because it can be very useful. A few more. New versus returning. Always look at the conversion rate of those two groups. Often you will find that the returning people have a much, much higher conversion rate. And so just by remarketing to that group, or at least bidding more for that group compared to people that have only been to the website once and then you're remarketing to them, that's generally going to get you a better result with your remarketing. Path length. Just again, good to glance at. And time lag, which is very similar to path length, but slightly different. So obviously more about time. How long does it take them to convert after that first visit? I'll also look at this 0 day. I'll show you the report in a minute. It'll make much more sense for those two. Mobile, I just want to understand the different conversion rate here basically between desktop and mobile. It's not perfect. Google Analytics obviously is going to treat those two visits from the same person. Maybe they're on the train on the way home. They start researching your product on their mobile. They get home, they jump onto their desktop computer and they buy. In Google Analytics, that's going to show almost certainly, unless you have users logged in, that's going to show as two distinct sessions. Mobile conversion rate usually much lower, desktop conversion rate usually much higher, because most people still prefer to check out on desktop. Still not seeing people buying with a thumbprint or using their face on Apple Pay. I still don't see Apple Pay on most e-com sites. No doubt that will continue to change over time, but for now, desktops usually have a higher conversion rate. And again, you don't need to build different groups for this, but you just might bid higher for your desktop remarketing than mobile, because again, more likely to be profitable. And lastly, where are those people? I've mentioned this before. It's not a massively useful report. Your conversion rate, certainly by city in the same country, usually going to be fairly similar, city to city or state to state. But that example I mentioned before, where you might have a huge amount of traffic, or a significant amount of traffic, not huge, but a significant amount of traffic from a different country, but that has a much, much lower conversion rate. That's good to know, and that might affect your campaign settings when you go to set this up in Google Ads. You might decide, oh, okay, rather than show ads to everybody on this list, all countries and territories, maybe I start by only showing ads to people in my local state, because that's 80% of my traffic, but 98% of my buyers. I'll start there. It's more likely to work better. Again, you don't need to build lists for all of those, but it is good to just get in the habit of glancing at those reports and thinking about what that means and how that might affect your remarketing strategy. At least ask yourself the question, what is this report telling me, and how might I use this data? It's a great question to ask, and that's going to get you better over time. That's the end of this document. In the next series of videos, I will walk you through some examples, and then I'll give you a longer checklist at the end.